The action of the film begins in 1898. The main character, prospector Daniel Plainview, is waving a pickaxe in the mine in search of gold or silver. One day, while blasting the deposits with dynamite, he falls down the stairs and breaks his leg. Unmoral and strong-willed, he manages to get out of the mine along with rock samples and crawl to people. The sample contains valuable metals, so the hero manages to earn. In 1902, continuing to work with a team of hired workers, Daniel finds traces of oil in another mine. The discovery forces him to switch to the extraction of black gold. Soon, success awaits him in this field. The team begins to slowly pump out the slurry from the deposit. But at the same time, a tragic incident happens with the death of one worker who had a small child. Daniel has no choice but to take care of him. In the 1911th year, the hero travels to different states, engaged in exploration and drilling of oil fields. He acts as a tenant of land plots, but not everywhere the owners meet him halfway. Therefore, he gladly accepts the offer of an unexpected visitor named Paul, who wants to sell information about a site with oil deposits. Land can be bought very cheaply, because the owners are not aware of its real value. The young man knows this firsthand, since this is his family's ranch. Soon Daniel, along with his son named H.W., goes to the specified coordinates. He hides from the owners the true purpose of the visit, pretending to be a quail hunter. Pitching a tent on the site, the hero meets Eli, Paul's twin brother, as well as his younger sister Mary, the same age as H.W., walking around the neighborhood with double-barreled guns at the ready in fields in all directions like the executioner of doom on the Martian plains. Hunters discover oil coming directly to the surface, the result of a recent earthquake. With an experienced eye, Daniel estimates that the deposit here is very large. It's enough to make a fortune if you approach the process correctly. For example, to stretch an oil pipeline 107 miles long directly to the sea, in order to significantly save on railway transportation. But first you need to buy up the local land. At the same time, local people should not know about minerals. This will only increase the cost of the site. In the evening, at dinner, Daniel haggles with the owner about the ranch. The hero informs that he plans to hunt quails here in the future. He offers a good sum, but Eli, the owner's son, is against it. He also knows that there is oil on the site, and the line sets the price 3 times more. But Daniel promises to donate $5,000 to his church if successful. That's what they decided. Immediately after that, the hero goes to buy up the rest of the surrounding areas. After that, he calls his assistant and the rest of the team of drillers by telegraph, simultaneously discouraging competitors from oil companies who have nothing left to catch here. All the places are occupied. However, among the locals, one old man, whose plot is located in the middle, does not want to sell his land so easily. First he wants to talk to the buyer in person. Daniel believes that in this way the cunning farmer simply stuffs the price, ignores him. Instead, he addresses the local assembly, promising to raise infrastructure and agriculture. His people will have to work here for a long time, so basic amenities are essential. Soon, work began to boil among the hills. A team of workers are working on the exploration and development of wells. Daniel himself and his son move from the tent to a small house. When the first tower is almost ready to launch, and as the head of the local clergy, offers to bless it before launching, Daniel agrees, but the next day, instead of the pastor, he introduces the local girl Mary to the townspeople and reads the blessing himself, thus making an enemy in the person of Eli. After H.W. starts the process, and the oil begins to swing. However, already at night drunk after celebrating the success of the hero will be unpleasant news. There was an incident with the death of a worker at the drilling site. Work has to be suspended, and Daniel has to go to church. Ask Lai to conduct the burial ceremony. In the church, a man becomes a witness to a whole performance, which was arranged by the pastor. The cunning businessman is skeptical of him, but the unassuming rural flock likes him. Oil production goes on as usual. However, soon another accident happens. The release of gas and the gushing of oil. H.W. gets hit by a shock wave. Stunned and unconscious, they barely manage to save him before the fire starts. The tower engages in flames and burns all night until it falls apart. In the morning, the deposits are undermined with dynamite, thereby falling asleep completely and stopping the fire. Only Daniel's son remains deaf after that. Tragedy leaves an imprint on the hero. When Eli turns to him with a request to pay the promised $5,000 for the improvement of the church, the oilman beats the priest in front of the workers, along the way wading in the mud. He asks why the pastor doesn't use his God's gift to heal his son. After that, Eli himself accuses his father of being cheap with the price of land, thereby bringing a vile deceiver and fraudster to their lands. One afternoon, a man comes to Daniel's house who introduces himself as Henry Plainview, his paternal brother. He read about the hero's success in the newspapers and came to report his father's death. Daniel warmly accepts him, although he suspects that he came from selfish and mercantile interests. Henry does not insist on accepting him, but says that he will not give up work, since he has no experience. Propagandizing family values, the hero decides to accept his brother's help. Maybe it saves his life. At night, Henry will be Daniel's during the fire. The arson was set by H.W., who cannot come to terms with his deafness. After that, the man decides to show it to a specialist. To do this, they get on the train, but just before departure, the hero leaves, instructing the assistant to take the boy away to a special boarding school for the deaf. Daniel is approached by competitors with an offer to sell plots and drilling wells. However, he refuses. His plan for the local lands is not finished yet. The man wants to lay an oil pipeline so as not to pay the owners of the railway for transportation. But the situation is complicated by the fact that the old man, with whom he once refused to talk in person, never sold his plot, and it is too expensive to lay a pipe around. Daniel goes to the ranch to talk to the obstinate owner, but does not find him at home. Then they, together with Henry, are engaged in geodetic work and laying the route for the future pipe. The route ends at the office of the oil company, where the hero symbolically drives the last pin into the table. Now it's a small matter to lay the pipe itself along the route. Having reached the beach in this way, Daniel and Henry swim in the ocean. Succumbing to feelings, the man tells his brother about his dream to build the same house that stood next door to the house of their common father. However, Henry's reaction leads him to think that he has no idea what he is talking about. Later that night, after partying in a pub with women of reduced social responsibility, Daniel threatens Henry with a gun. Daniel asks who he really is, and he confesses that he was a friend of his real brother, who died of tuberculosis. After taking his belongings, the imposter went to Daniel to impersonate a relative. Having flared up, the hero kills the deceiver and buries his body in the forest, leaving only the burned diary of a real brother, with whom he never had time to get acquainted. In the morning, Daniel will be an old man, the owner of the plot he needs. He agrees to lease his plot for laying an oil pipeline, but on one condition: the man must be baptized in Eli's church. This is the only way he can atone for his sins. After calculating the potential benefits of the deal, Daniel agrees. At the next service, the preacher arranges a performance in order to absolve him of his sins, and at the same time force him to confess loudly, out loud, and repeatedly in not the most worthy deeds. In particular, the priest forces him to repent that the hero refused a child who became disabled during an accident on a drilling rig. After the baptism, the man receives a lease agreement and begins work on laying an oil pipeline. Hired workers cheerfully swing shovels, combining time and space according to the old army method, digging from here to lunch. Daniel, meanwhile, returns his son. He was brought along with a sign language teacher. The man hugs him and leads him home, but the boy, never forgiving the betrayal, begins to beat his father, venting resentment and anger. Later, they have lunch at a restaurant where they meet competitors from an oil company. Drunk Daniel is rude to businessmen, unable to contain his gloating. Contrary to malicious forecasts, his plan to lay an oil pipeline worked. The town is slowly thriving, extracting oil. H.W. is settling in and learning to communicate with sign language, and Mary, the sister of Reverend Eli, spends more and more time with him. The action is transferred to 1927th year. Watch the wedding of H.W. and Mary. The daughter-in-law pronounces the oath of allegiance in sign language so that the betrothed can understand. Daniel, meanwhile, signs checks in a huge mansion built especially for him. As an accomplished person who has achieved success in business, he is given a well-deserved rest. Gradually he gets drunk and has fun shooting at targets right in the house. His son visits him with a sign language interpreter to inform him that he wants to go to Mexico and start his own oil production business there. Daniel doesn't like it. Such a turn will turn the son into a competitor. Nevertheless, the young man insists on his decision. The conversation ends with a quarrel, during which the old man even makes him remember that he is deaf, not mine, and can speak, not just gesticulate. Finally, Daniel confesses to H.W. that he is not his own son, but adopted. He adopted him in order to make a favorable impression on people during negotiations. The son leaves his father's house without turning around at the insulting shouts in the back, which he still does not hear. Left alone, Daniel indulges in alcoholism and memories. In the morning, the butler tries to revive him with a heavy hangover. Eli visited the owner. The priest offers the businessman to buy out the rented plot of a stubborn old man who died and bequeathed the land to the church. Eli wants to get $100,000 for it, plus the 5 that Daniel promised once, but never paid. The oilman agrees, but on one condition: the preacher must declare here and now that there is no God, and he himself is just a deceiver who enjoys people's trust. Religious beliefs. That's good, of course, but 105,000. That's 105,000. Eli agrees and renounces the faith several times while the old man enjoys the spectacle and makes the necessary adjustments. Having thoroughly enjoyed the humiliation of the guest, Daniel admits that there will be no deal. The land he is talking about has long been worked out by drainage. There is simply no oil left there. The discouraged priest sobs, begging the cunning businessman to take pity and donate some money. God's gift in no way warned him about the severe economic crisis that had overtaken the whole country. The conversation gradually infuriates the already mentally unstable Daniel. He scares Eli, then starts chasing him down the bowling alley. Having overtaken the terrified pastor, the oilman beats him with a wooden pin until he smashed his skull. The assistant who came down to the hall finds the owner sitting next to a fresh corpse. "I'm all calm," Daniel reports. The screen turns the color of oil.